Howdy, Monster here. Today I'm going to be going over my blood build with some Arcane Magic thrown in for the mix. Now this build I did use when I platinumed Elden Ring a while back, and it just was used to obliterate all of the bosses, with the exception of a couple that are immune to bleed and hemorrhage. But yeah, this build is super overpowered still, and I'm just going to go through the rundown of what I used for mine. I will add links to all of my gear that I use in the description below. First up, I use Rivers of Blood. The sheer amount of damage that Corpse Piler does is ridiculous. As you can see, it absolutely melts enemies and bosses alike. Next I use the Occult Uchi Katana with Seppuku, Ash of War. I use Occult because I predominantly use the Arcane stat, so that raises its damage by a lot. Next I use Eleonora's Poleblade, which you can retrieve by defeating Eleonora at the Second Church of Marika. There's a quest line further on in the game to receive that. Bloodblade Dance, while not as powerful as Corpse Piler, is excellent at staggering enemies to get into that critical hit and possibly the kill. Next, in order to use Arcane Magic, I use Dragon Communion's Seal. This scales best with the Arcane stat. Now that can be found at the Fringe Folk Hero's grave, that's right at the start of the game, but you need to use 2 keys to enter it. However, it is quite difficult to get through. For the mask, I use the White Mask. Now that is because it increases attack power when there's blood loss nearby, which is helpful for us. This is a drop from the Var quest line and drops from a White Mask NPC invader in the Mogwin Dynasty Mausoleum area. The area boss must not be dead for these NPCs to appear. You can use any armour really to go with this, but for the moment I'm just going to use the Raptor's Black Feathers and Royal Remains. Now the Raptor's Black Feather, it strengthens jump attacks, which you can also pair with the Claw Talisman for even more damage when doing jump attacks, especially with LB, jumping dual attack. Now onto the talismans. I use Ritual Sword Talisman, which increases attack power by quite a lot when your HP is at max. So you've got to make sure you're topping up with flasks if you get a bit of damage, or you're going to lose that increase of weapon power. Now this is retrieved in the Lux Ruins, in a chest after defeating the boss Demi-Human Queen Gillica. Next is Shard of Alexander. This greatly boosts the attack power of skill, so that is going to massively increase our Corpse Piler. As well as if we are going to be using Eleonora's Poleblade, it's going to increase that Bloodblade Dance. This is obtained by completing the Alexander's questline. You get that near the end of the game. Next is the talisman Lord of Blood's Exaltation. Now this is great because it works in tandem with White Mask and increases attack power via blood loss in the area. You get Lord of Blood's Exaltation from Esgar, Priest of Blood in Leyndell Catacombs later on in the game. Next and last talisman is the Rotten Winged Sword Insignia, this raises attack power when you're constantly hitting with combos, so it's great for Corpse Piler as well. A reward for assisting Millicent later on in the game. Now all of these I put links down in the bottom, so you can go and have a look, see the information about them, where to get them. Some of them require quite a lot in order to get. Now if there's any of these that you don't have, however, pretty much Lord of Blood and Rotten Wings make this build. You can use, I have all of the Erdtrees, so you can use Erdtree's Favour. I use +2. This is retrieved in the end game. The others you can get earlier on in the game. The other one you could use is Radagon's Soreseal, which you can rush right at the beginning of the game and is extremely effective. It does increase your damage taken, but you don't really notice it that much, especially if you're pretty good at dodging, but it does boost a lot. Now putting all these together, magic that I use for this build. I use Rotten Breath, Swarm of Flies, and Flame Grant Me Strength to increase that attack power. Flame Cleanse Me is just there to get rid of that Cure and Scarlet Rot that can be a bit of a pain. In order to use these, we do need to have Faith at 15. So for stats, So this is for a level 150 build. I use Arcane at 60, Faith at 15, Dexterity at 21 to allow for the use of Eleonora's Poleblade, Strength at 12 to allow for the use of the Katanas, Endurance at 30, Mind at 30, Vigour at 45. Now you don't have to have Mind that high, you can spread it more into Vigour if you're not going to be using spells that much, or you can put them into Endurance. I have it this way, and this is what I did the game with, and it was pretty damn good. Now to increase our weapon stats further, we need to use some abilities. Grant me strength. Swap to offhand to use Sabuku. Swap back. Heal up. Let's check on the stats of these weapons. So we've got 1073 and 950, and Eleonora's has got 971. Now these buffs don't appear to last that long anymore, but they are pretty easy to quickly buff back up. I will show you a bit of it in action. As you can see, it's massive damage. Now for some Eleonora's Poleblade. The stagger on this weapon is amazing, especially on bigger monsters. You see here, it just staggers this big dog bastard so easily. And here just absolutely obliterates this giant. I completely missed the crit, but hey ho, he still dies. Rotten Breath is a great damage, especially in AoE situations as well. You hold down the actual spell button and it does even more damage. It's really good on some bosses, you can absolutely wipe them out. It also leaves a lingering Scarlet Rot to increase damage further. I don't use Swarm of Flies too much, but it is good in some scenarios, especially when you spam it. It does build up hemorrhage pretty damn quickly. This is one of the few minor bosses left in this current playthrough, and it's absolutely obliterated. However, silly me didn't top up the flask after using the Superku, so yeah, just try and get into the habit of remembering to use your flask, especially if you're using the Ritual Sword Talisman. That's all for now, thanks for watching. I'm going to have some more build videos coming up that are my own personal builds, trying to mix from other builds put together. So if you like this, give it a like and subscribe and comment down below maybe. Catch you later.